Hello, today we are going to build a simple smart contract in Solidity using a low-code platform like Astrakode blockchain. The project we want to build is a simple counter, and as we can see, the contract is pretty straightforward. We have the version of Solidity your smart contract uses in the contract called counter. Inside the contract we have 5 blocks. First, we have an instantiation of a variable called count, which stores the counter value. Then we have a constructor which sets the initial value of the counter when the smart contract is created. And then we have the functions of our counter. In this case, we have 2 functions to increment and decrement the value and 1 function to show the value. This project is small and simple, but we all know that coding can indeed be challenging, especially when dealing with technologies like blockchain. Using a low-code platform can alleviate some of that burden, so you can focus more on the logic of the application and less on the intricacies of chain code. As we can see, this is the whole contract build with Astrakode blockchain. We have the contract, we have the variables we need, and we have a list of functions. In the bottom part, we also have a code preview that we can leverage to understand better what we are going to build. So let's start from scratch and see how it goes. Let's start. First thing, we create a contract, so let's click on the plus button. Then add the contract name counter. If we click on the code preview, we can also look at the code. In this case, we have only the version and our empty contract. Moving on, we can create the variables. In the example, we only have count, but here I want to make 2 variables. One for the count and one for the increment-decrement value. Let's add a data entity. Name it count. The type is simple and it's an integer, so let's select a subtype of int. The second one is the increment-decrement value, so let's create value1 with the type of free input. It's also an integer, so let's select again int and write the value of 1. Let's refresh the code preview. As we can see, the contract now has both the variable count and value1. Moving on, we can start to build the core of our contract, the functions. First thing, we create a function called increment. Let's make it public. If we click on the sidebar, we can start to build it using the diagram, so let's add an element with the plus button, data entity manipulation. We want to modify the variable count, so we need to manipulate the variable. The primary scope is the variable we want to modify, and operation is what we want to do in practice. In this example, we select count and make an operation with the type of math. We want to increment the value, so we want to do something like count equals count plus 1. Select add in the operator menu, use count as first term and value1 as the second term. With the element completed, we can refresh the preview and look on the new function added in the contract. Every custom function is a series of elements connected together, so if we need to do 10 things, we can simply connect 10 elements one after the other with this simple diagram. We can add more elements. We can move them. And we can delete what we don't need anymore. For the decrement function, the structure is the same, so we can easily click duplicate and then edit. We change the name and fill the element data entity manipulation. As before, we select the variable count and an operation math. We want to make count equals count minus 1, so select count, select value1, and select subtract. Now we have both the increment and the decrement functions, but we are missing an important step, the constructor. The constructor, it's a special kind of function. We use it to initialize the value of the counter the first time the contract loads. To build it, we simply build a function and select it as custom constructor in the contract menu. Our constructor set the value of the counter to 0, so it uses an element data entity manipulation, just like the increment function, so we can copy the function once again. Edit to change the name, let's call it constructor function, and save. This manipulation should be a little bit different from the other ones. We want to set the value to 0, so we click the operation button and select an operation with the type of assign. Here we can see what variable we are mapping, in this case count, and we can select an integer to assign to count from this list. We don't have a variable for the value 0, so let's make one. Clicking on the plus button here. Let's call it 0, with a subtype of int and a value of 0. Now that the function is done, we can refresh the code preview to look at the generated code. Here we can see the 3 functions we just did, but we can't still see the constructor. To finalize the constructor, we edit the contract and select the constructor function from the custom constructor menu. Refresh the preview once again, and here comes the constructor. Last thing we need to build is the getCount function. Let's add another function, but this time we need parameters. We don't need input params as the variable count is global, but we need to specify what kind of parameter we want to return from this function. So let's add a return param. We want to return the variable count, so it should be an integer. The getCount, it's pretty straightforward. We just need to add a return element and map the return param with the variable we want to return, in this case count. Refresh the preview one last time, and it's done. Are we happy with the result? If the project is done, and we are happy, we only need to download our freshly made smart contract. To do so, click on the Generate button, and when the generation is completed, we can download the zip file with our contract and other utility files. I hope you found this video helpful. Do you like this low-code platform? Let me know in the comment. See you next time, and thank you for watching.